Hello, everybody. I'm Michael from New Left, and for the first time, we are doing an international interview with Barbara Steiner. Barbara, please introduce yourself.
Hi, Michael. Hi, Tim. Nice to join you. I'm the director of Transform Europe. Transform Europe is the foundation of the Party of the European Left and a network of 38 organizations in 22 European countries, not only EU, but European countries. We are a European network for alternative thinking and political dialogue. What does it mean? We are engaged in political education and critical scientific analysis, and we are also a room for dialogue between political actors, activists, unions, movements, and NGOs.
Pretty broad scope, so this will be the topic of our discussion today, how Transform is actually functioning, where it started, etc., etc. Tim, what about you? Who are you? People don't know you.
Okay, so I'm Tim Malone. I'm currently a publicity officer for UNIA, largely IT union here in Slovakia.
And you are a member of the New Left as well. Yeah,
I am also a member. And I'm British. I'm from Manchester. My wife is Slovak, which is why I'm here. I was recently the chair of the UNIA in Fiserv, but laid off, as we discussed, by Frank Bisignano last November. But so now I'm looking for work, but time to work on the publicity for UNIA.
Thank you. So, as I said, the topic of our discussion today is Transform. So, Barbara, if you could please describe what Transform does, where it started, what is it about, give us a little bit more detail. Just one thing that you omitted, I think you didn't say that you are based in Vienna, but you are managing all of Europe, when I understood it correctly, right?
Yes, the coordination office of Transform is in Vienna. Unlike the other political foundations like the Green European Foundation or the FEPS of the Social Democrats, who have their headquarters in Brussels, we are in Central and Eastern Europe with our coordination office. This gives us also the advantage of being closer to Eastern Europe, and this is also that we are maybe going to talk about. It had been a long time a blind spot also in the European left, the left of Central and Eastern Europe. And since 10 years now, Transform is following a Central and Eastern European strategy to put more emphasis on following and making contact and cooperation with the left in Central and Eastern Europe and Southeastern Europe. Also, if there are no parties, but there are as Nova Łavica organizations in these countries. And so it's very nice to be in contact with you now.
Thank you very much. When you are saying Europe, you mean only European Union, or are there also countries from abroad, European Union in Eastern and Central Europe that you are working with? You know, former Yugoslavia countries, or I don't know, Ukraine and stuff like that as well?
Yes, especially at the moment we work together with eCash from Albania and the Center for Politics of Emancipation in Serbia. We have also a member in Moldavia, in Turkey, in Norway. I know this because I know this by heart because the European Parliament, we are basically to a big extent funded by the European Parliament. They always check, okay, are you working with non-EU country-based organizations? Because there is also, for example, a law that does forbid to receive money from non-EU sources. This was introduced 2 European elections ago when Steve Bannon announced to support the extreme right. It is now also used, especially controlled whether parties receive funding from Russia or from China, but also US. But it applies, of course, also for other non-EU countries. Nonetheless, we think Europe is more than EU, and we follow this pan-European thought, so to say, and principle, and are happy to work together also with non-EU.
What about Turkey? You know,
left.
it's part of Europe, but it's not. What about Turkey?
Yes, our member organization is the blog of the Left Party that is also a member of European Left Party. But we are in contact, of course, also with the Democratic Party, former HDP, and in solidarity with the peace process. And now, of course, hoping that Öcalan might be finally liberated, and that a solution to the Kurdish question becomes more realistic. It does not look so good with Erdogan, but let's see.
And any groups from Britain that you work with?
Yes, our member organization, Transform UK, is affiliated to Left Unity, a small left party that is also a member of European Left Party. And we have also as an observer the World Transformed, that used to be the festival organized by Momentum around Corbyn. We do cooperate now with Corbyn's new organization for peace. And we are happy that and honored that he's a frequent speaker also at events we do in cooperation with the European Left Party, like European Forum. And we also hope to have him at the Peace Conference in Brussels in June, where we want to have a broad mobilization just after the anti-NATO and NATO summit and anti-NATO summit in The Hague in June.
Okay.
Question, when we are talking about all these countries, what about Slovakia and Czech Republic? So what are the connections there? Are you working with someone in Czech Republic or in Slovakia? And what are your contacts and what are your experiences with our, well, co-patriots?
The relations to Czech left is deeper, I would say. Not founding, but very more or less from the beginning, early 2000s, since the founding of Transform, the official founding was in 2007. So, but the unofficial founding as a network was already in the early 2000s around the World Social Forum process. And there is the Center for European Dialogue, SPED, that understood itself also as a room for dialogue between the Party of Democratic Socialism, now Levice, and KSČM, the Communist Party of Bohemia and Moravia. So they were also what Transform is also doing, being a room for dialogue for different left-wingers. And they are part of the board, of the elected board of Transform also. We do have, of course, connections to both parties. They are also both in the European Left Party. And there is a connection, of course, also Rosa Luxemburg Foundation is bigger than Transform, but it's also a member of Transform. Rosa Luxemburg Foundation, the foundation of Die Linke in Germany. And they have also an office in Prague. So we are connected with them. In Slovakia, we have, for example, exchange with Socialisti SK, the left-wing organization in Slovakia. They are also have been at the Volksstimme Fest, which is an Austrian festival in the tradition of the press festivals. Volksstimme used to be the daily press of the Communist Party in Austria. Now is a monthly journal. And Volksstimmefest is always having also a European village where Transform Europe is also involved. And there, for example, we met with Socialisti SK, but also the KAŽDÉ from Czechia has traditionally a stand there in a quite big delegation.
It's in Vienna, this village. Can you please tell us when it takes place so that people from Bratislava or whoever wants to visit can...
Yes, the festival is
because it's 1 hour ride, so it's, you know, nearby.
Yes, you're warmly welcome, and it's really great fun with great discussions, but also music, drinks, celebration.
Okay.
It's
All
always
the
the last.
Yeah.
Yes, it's always the last weekend of the Austrian summer holidays. So this year it will be the 31st of August and 1st of September. It's always 2 days a weekend.
And it's in Vienna, somewhere in Vienna based, yeah?
It's it's on the 30th and 31st of August.
Okay.
It's the weekend, and it's in Jesuitenwiese in the Prater.
Okay.
It's a huge green area.
Stick the name in the chat.
Yes.
Yeah. Tim's German isn't outstanding. Yeah.
The Jesuits meadow. In the Prater. Prater used to be hunting grounds of the emperors, and now is one of the biggest green parks.
Very good.
I put it in the chat.
Much better use for it.
Thank you.
Yes.
We will think about it. I mean, not think about it in that sense, but we want to propagate it. So because we have relatively big Facebook page in Slovakia with over 10,000 followers, so you know we can run some ads for Bratislava folks who want to, if they want to go there, then it's a 1 hour train ride, and you can meet fellow leftists, I guess, from all around Europe, or is it only Central European happening?
Well, German's Linke is always so represented with a big tent always, and they also come with a original Thuringian sausages.
Sausages, okay.
Yes, and there is also a Cuban stand. It's not in the European village, of course. Cuban embassy also represented there. There is traditionally also in the Solidarity village a stand from Nicaragua, a stand from Chile, Argentine. So it's very international, and many Kurdish or Turkish stands, of course, also Yugoslavian. You're more than welcome.
For the audience, we will put the link Barbara so kindly shared with us now into the notes to the call and to the video, so that people can follow it and go there if they want. Tim, any questions?
No.
Okay, interviewer. Okay, Barbara, so tell us how you came to be a Transform director. What was your kind of path? How did you end up where you are, and you know how it all happened? And do you like it? What do you see for the future? You know, what's going on?
I did in 2010 a study for Transform. I'm a political scientist about the elections, the European Union elections in 2009 compared to 2004. So I looked at the various left-wing parties in whole EU and compared, so to say, their electoral results. This was so to say, the first job for Transform, and in 2010 it quite soon became clear Transform was only 2 employees back then, that they need more support in the office here in Vienna. It was back then Walter Bayer, one of the co-founders of Transform, and now president of European Left Party. For a long time, he had been the coordinator of Transform Europe, and together with Heidi.
Sorry to jump in so that
Yes.
people understand and know this, that even though Austria is in the European Parliament in the left fraction, the head of the left is in Austria or in Vienna, correct?
He is Austrian, yes. Walter
Yeah,
is
but
traveling quite a lot.
Yes, obviously, but you don't have any
From the
radical
Austrian
left
Communist
party
Party,
in Austria,
Yes.
from Austria in European Parliament. The same way as Slovaks don't have anyone, and
Yes.
the Czechs, even though the Czechs had the communist MP in last parliament, when I remember it correctly.
Also in this parliament, yes.
Well, it's tricky because we can also speak about it or talk about it, about this division in the left, what happened a couple of weeks ago, a month ago, what's going on there, because that's well, interesting topic and people should know about it. Anyway, so even though Austria has no party in European Parliament in the left, the head of the all of European left is an Austrian guy, yeah?
Maybe it's important to have here the division between the European Left Party and the and the left faction, former GUE NGL, now left, in the European Parliament. So it's not the same. The party, there is also other parties member, also of non-EU origin, and the faction, of course, constitutes only of those parties that entered the European Parliament.
So the party is kind of like a tent, and under the umbrella, and under this umbrella, there are some parties who are in EU Parliament and some who are not. Yeah, and all of this is under the umbrella of your colleague, fellow from Austria, correct?
Well, to be correct, one would have to say now there are two tents now, because last June there was a split of European Left Party that you were already pointing at, and there is now a split in the European Left Party landscape, the European Left EL, and then the European Left Alliance ELA. So some parties left from the European Left Party and also together with other parties founded this new party.
Okay, so that means that there are actually two heads for both parties. Yeah, one is the colleague of yours from Austria, and there is another party, whoever that is. Yeah, and you are in the tent of the old party as a Transform Institute and as a head of the Transform Institute.
Yes,
excuse me, this is why I'm asking these questions, because this is totally new landscape for us in Slovakia. We are not part of it. Socialisti SK are part of it partially, but otherwise Slovakia is more or less dead on the left spectrum. So this is totally terra incognita for myself. I don't know about Tim. Maybe he knows these European nitty-gritty details, what's going on in the left, but I don't.
I'm curious, really, the difference, why people are leaving and what the juncture is of the break. And trying to summarize it in such a short time might be very difficult, but is it... there's quite a number of left-wing groups that would be opposed to austerity programs that is popular amongst much of the right wing right now. Is that a juncture that is causing problems on the left as well? Is to what extent they seize control of the means of production, or that they allow private sector but want a more Keynesian type of social democratic view? Where's the friction within this alliance as to how left-wing the different groups are?
Thanks for the question.
I'm not sure whether I'm making myself clear, really, but
yes.
Okay.
Actually, the anti-austerity movement of 2000, after the crisis and the crisis mismanagement of 2008-9 and following brought together the left and also the what was now a cleavage that so to say a problem is the war and the question of how to reach peace. But because so if you look at EL and ELA, you will find 95% of the content and the demands and is similar, is the same. But you have some points like as regards to weapons delivery and support of Ukraine where there are differences. But, and this is the interesting thing, it's not that whole ELA is in favor of weapons delivery, because you have the very strong opposition to NATO and weapons delivery in Podemos, for example, which is also part of ELA. So it's not so very clear that it is also inhomogeneous, so to say, on this question. I think. Well, we in Transform, we are very sad about this split. We think that now with the rise of the extreme right and the political and economical crisis we are in globally, it's the worst time for a split, of course. But it is as it is, and we try to be Transform for all. We do everything to try to keep the bridges, to keep the doors open, to keep the dialogue. Party foundations of parties that are in the new party in ELA are also inside the Transform Europe network. So this is a big advantage and a big chance, we think, to keep these doors open. And well, we are still trying to have, so to say, projects with both parties and exchange. Yes, we will see what the future will bring here, and if in the future there will be a reunification at some point again.
To jump in, what I heard, the rumors when I spoke with my Czech friends, is that there are some personality clashes, more like the positional clashes, that it was more about, well, human, I don't know how to put it, something human esprit, I don't know how to put it, that led to this split.
I think where there is politics and where there are humans,
clashes.
It's always natural that there are also conflicts or human. Yeah, it's only human. I'm not sure if this was the main reason. I probably there is also cultural differences, and yeah, it might also go together with.
And they said also something about
conflicts.
like statutes or the way how the old party was functioning, that it was suboptimal setup, and this was also one of the reasons why it happened. So from what I understood, it looks more like a promising kind of tidying up of the situation, because it grew organically, it seems. And certain things were not thought through, and now the consequences of these suboptimal statutes are, biting you back from the past. Was it part of the reason?
I'm not an expert on European left's statutes, but what I know is that the question of the consensus principle was heavily criticized by those parties that are now forming
something
European
similar
Left
like in
Party.
European Union, when you have a democracy base that everyone has to agree, as we are experiencing for a couple of years now, and there is this one culprit like Hungary who wants to exploit this rule, and all the others have to kind of, I don't know how to put it, bribe this one party or one country, then it might lead to more troubles and more turmoil than it's necessary, because majority is on the same page anyway. So I don't know, that's what I heard, so I'm asking, because it might be similar dynamic like in European Union, if the way how it was set up in the left was similar how the whole European Union was set up from the beginning.
No. In the European Left Party, there was the principle of consensus. So this comes from basis democracy, rather, and what we observe in European Union, also with the weight of European Parliament when it comes to decision making, we always criticize a lack of democracy. I think the critique for EL statute and decision finding was then rather that small parties that do not represent a lot of voters in their countries, they do have the same vote inside the European Left Party, but how else should it be? But then, of course, with the consensus principle, there is sometimes the problem that decisions can be blocked.
Sorry to jump in. What does it mean? You are a political scientist, so for you it's obvious, but what does it mean, consensus principle? Can you please explain it? It's a majority,
no, everybody's on the same page.
Everybody has to be 100% for whatever it is. Okay, so 100%, but not the majority, right?
I see a fundamental problem really with a coalition of different left-wing groups, because it's quite easy to be anti-austerity. It's quite easy to see the impacts of the banks being bailed out in 2008 and the crash, and the right wing and the drift of racism across the whole of the continent. So in that sense, there's a coalition. But at the same time, you have to be really clear what your goal is, what you want to replace it with. And if you want to replace it with something harking back to Keynesianism of the 60s or 70s, is that possible in the current situation? So we've had 30 years of neoliberalism. You have to be really clear what kind of society you want. And at the same time, there'll be huge differences between the left-wing groups as to what extent you want to seize the means of production, or are you somehow harking back to the 70s that you somehow want to return to the economies of social democracy that were then prevalent at the time before neoliberalism? And there's loads of room for every middle ground between those 2 points. And I don't believe that it can just come down to personalities. You have to have a certain level of clarity about what you're aiming for. Otherwise, you are going to have complete distinct positions, even amongst the left-wing alliances. You're anti-austerity, you're anti-racism, but what kind of society are you aiming for?
I think, Tim, this is a weakness in general in the left, that we know exactly what we are against, but we have too less of a picture and utopia of what we want to reach. The 2004 and the funding of the European Left Party, it was a historical success because it was an overcoming of Stalinism. It was a funding in the spirit together against the Stalinist deformation of our movement. And there were the former communist, still communist parties together with the renewed democratic socialist and renewed ecological left parties coming together. This was a historic compromise, I would say. And as when it comes to the strategy or also the goals, so to say, you always had, I think, quite a diversity from seizing the means of production to more reform-oriented politics. I think you always had what all united is the overcoming capitalism, overcoming patriarchy, overcoming new colonial exploitation, internationalism. I think those grounds, they were common, but I guess it was always, as there were 40 parties, so to say, it was always a spectrum in some way.
It's whether you can believe that somehow you can grab the reins of the state and run it in a socialist fashion, or whether the state is inherently capitalist and that actually it needs a complete overhaul. And that is a dilemma for much in the left, because there is a belief that somehow if they merely get into power, if they merely hold the reins of power, then they can transform it. And yet the history is one of disappointment and disillusionment, as that actually when they get into power and they find themselves in charge of a capitalist economy, that they then look very similar to those that they've been opposing, because some of the decisions are forced on them or are completely out of their control, and yet they end up then in positions of compromise to the point that their original supporters don't recognize what they've joined.
We saw this
you're
in
coming together on the left
2015.
and you're not even grabbing the reins of the power. Many of the left-wing groups are saying we have to be 100% clear now what we're actually aiming at. But that doesn't take away from the laudable attempt to oppose, the rampant racism, the rampant. The right wing are very, very clear what they want to do, and the things that would have been at one time completely beyond the pale are now coming back into fashion, with Trump and Hungary and Orban and all of them are completely undermining democracy. Don't give a damn about the democratic principle. They want very clearly to kick out immigrants and to push through privatization and to force the workers to pay for the cost of any economic crisis. So, yeah, I think there's definitely room for us to unite against their agenda. At the same time, it's difficult to keep that alliance together unless you have a very strong vision about what you're aiming for.
I find it always difficult, the notion of democracy, because what we, so to say, get taught by the liberals is democracy is you vote every 4 or 5 years, and only the citizenship holders, so to say. What we are lacking is real democracy, is economic democracy. Is I mean, half of our lives we are at the workplace, but there is no democracy. So how can you really talk of a democratic society? So this just so to say comes to my mind.
I'm
so
hopeful
this
that we can introduce something even in such a small fledgling union as UNIA.
Yes,
we get it right so that we are democratic and that the members can see that opportunity to influence the direction UNIA takes. We're not there yet, but I think that is a goal that we should aim for.
As you alluded to it a little bit, I have a question about the role of the state and government for the left as a party, or those two parties, how they see it. Both agree that the state is necessary, or are there any fractions that say they, proper anarchists are against state? So what's going on there? Because I can see that at least in Slovakia and Czech Republic, I'm not an expert, but from my gut feeling, I can see that the old communists are, and this is mega interesting, they fell into the right-wing narratives in the last couple of years. I don't know about other countries, but here in Slovakia, as the pandemic hit, then there were more or less all of them in that anti-vaccination madness, and for me it was interesting to see how certain patterns of viewing the reality align, and some align another way. Because as a vaccination, let's take that as another example. What was the position in the New Left? Was there a split, or everyone agreed that the doctors know better than some charlatans on YouTube what to do?
these were many questions now.
No, basically two, about the state and the position of government in the left, how it's perceived, and the other about, because as I said, from my perspective, the pandemic was a nice kind of test environment to see who stands where, because the communists, as I said, at least in Slovakia and Czech Republic, went with the kind of neo-fascists in that narrative. We can see it with Fico. Well, he, as an old communist, and the Communist Party as well, they moved to the right, and they followed this trend since then, basically. Not that they were ever proper leftists, but now it's just out in the open and obvious that it's not the left anymore at all.
So European left was very clear, abandon all patents on vaccinations, provide proper health care, expand healthcare, expand salaries and infrastructure for healthcare. This is, so to say, the one of the key focus of European left, the healthcare workers and the abolishing of the patents.
So there was no anti-vaxxer undercurrent somewhere in the left? Because we have seen it in Slovakia on the left spectrum. As I said, the old communists were mega anti-vaxxers.
I don't know about, you mentioned the anarchists. I'm not very, I'm not an expert, and I don't know much about the Anarchist International. But in Austria, it was interesting that out of a critique of the state, and out of a critique of the authoritarian state and the authoritarian forms a state can get, it was mostly the elder anarchists that also somehow went with some right-wingers in this measurement critique or anti-vaccine movement. Out of this, this critique of the state, which of course is also justified. I think that we had an authoritarian drive during the pandemics and also a surveillance drive. But yeah, there were some anarchists for Austria, I can say it. In Europe, I could not tell. And the second question
was the role of government and the dynamic in the left, because as I said, the communists are more pro-government, the democratic socialists and anarchists like myself are, well, not so keen on government. So what's going on there?
This is a very old question in the European left, in Transform, in political science, whether... well, we had the example in 2015 in Greece. Syriza won the elections and went to the government. But they always said, we are in government, but we don't have the power. What does it mean? It means, you are not automatically having the bureaucracy in a country, and so to say the rule, you might be in government, but you might not govern immediately. And the second thing is what Tim pointed out, we are in a globalized world with a financialized economy, and to get into government as a radical left in one small country in Europe, is not enough.
You're in government, but you're not in power. The strings of power are multifaceted, and confronting them and controlling them requires a radical transformation of the current setup. So seizing control of the government is one thing, but seizing control of the state and the way it operates is quite another task.
Exactly, and then it's only one state. What our comrades from Greece always told us, well, you want to be in solidarity with us, but the best thing you can do, change the politics and change the governments of your countries. Only if we have a critical number of left-wing governments in Europe, we can even think of changing something. But what was... It did not happen, not really in Portugal, not in Spain back in this moment, not in other countries, to change the government, to have back then radical left government. In Syriza government was simply crushed by the Troika and the European Union states. And what we saw in parts of the left is, Syriza in Greece, it was a nice reflection for your solidarity aim, but it had nothing to do with your struggles in your countries that would have been necessary, so to say. So the blaming Syriza to being the traitors, also I find it not good, because what we did not change our governments and did not make possible a European-wide change of politics.
How are the leftists viewing the, I would say, success of Die Linke in Germany and also of Mélenchon in France, and the possibility of, well, hopefully even bigger win if really Le Pen is kind of pushed out? We will see how that goes. And well, as far as I know, the president of France can't go there for a third term, so someone new has to step in. So there is a window of opportunity, let's put it that way, in France. So what are they saying about this?
This is, of course, a big hope. And we saw in France how fast it is possible for the left, green and socialists to unite if there is really if it is a question of survival, if there is really the necessity. So, of course, our big hope is that this can function and this can work again for the presidential election. Marine Le Pen is rightfully, well, there was a court decision, so to say. I would not call it being pushed out. And of course, there is a big hope that this new Popular Front could run again and could win for the presidential election. And the comeback of the Linke is a big surprise for them, for us, for many. And it gives, of course, hope that it is possible in a very short time to have a comeback as a as a left defending socio-economic demands together with feminist demands, together with anti-racist demands, and not joining, and with demands for peace, so not joining this general trend that we see now, all in favor of war and in favor of militarization.
How is it looking in other countries when you're talking with the leftists from wherever? Where is the possibility to succeed as they succeeded back then with Syriza? And well, I wouldn't call it a success what Die Linke did, but at least they are in parliament and they have almost 9%, so that's nice. But the French and Mélenchon situation kind of showed us the other way around, that the liberals will stab you into your back, and even though Mélenchon kind of won, then they got not much out of it. So how is it looking in other countries? What is on the horizon?
In Spain, the radical left is in a coalition government with the Social Democrats. This is not so much talked about. This is not so known.
Sorry to jump in. That's Podemos or that's something else?
No, it's called SOMAR. It is an alliance of the United Left with others.
And Podemos isn't radical left? Because in my mind,
Podemos is also radical left.
But they are not in the government.
Unfortunately, they are not part of the government coalition anymore.
So there are multiple radical left parties, and the Spanish are so lucky that they can choose, because we have no radical left party in our parliament at all in Slovakia. So
yes, of course, in my opinion, of course, it would always be even better if all were united, all radical left. And what the radical left ministers are doing in Spain, be it with the labor law or consumers law, feminist laws, is they really bring forward concrete measurements that help people. They introduced the 37 hours week now, or abolished insecure working contracts, like millions of them. So it is not like overthrowing capitalism, but it is concrete, helpful measures they can do, and laws.
And another question that pops often into my head is the response of the leftists to the possibility that we had for, let's say, 10 years, that we had the zero interest rates and the failed possibility that we didn't invest in Europe more or less at all into infrastructure and development of our continent. So how are they viewing it? I don't feel much, self-criticism that this is a ship that sailed and might never return in our lifetimes. It was once in a century, couple of years of zero interest rates, at least as far as I know, that this is not something that is happening every other decade or what, you know. So when you look at the interest rates and long-term perspective, or from the long-term perspective, this was a missed opportunity par excellence, that we kind of didn't do anything, and we had these austerity measures instead, and we lost God knows what compared to China or America.
Transform will in May bring out a comparative study of the next generation EU, the recovery and resilience for after the pandemic, and their spending. And it what I can already say now, it clearly shows that it makes a difference whether there was a left social democratic government like in Spain, or whether there was a right-wing government like in Italy, how these funds were spent and invested. So it makes a difference if it is invested de facto bringing something for workers and the people, or if it again goes to the financial market, so to say. And no, I totally agree with you. We see now with the investing and spending part of the budget on military equipment and on militarization, it is possible, but where was it possible? For example, after the pandemic, where was the big investment to healthcare sector and hospitals?
Jump in. I don't know how many Slovaks know this, but in Germany, the underinvestment into infrastructure and all the other things supposedly is 1,000 billions, so 1 trillion euros in Germany only. It's like it's falling apart. There are bridges that just fell. It just fell, you know. So underinvestment. Germany is the biggest economy in Europe and the third biggest economy on the planet. And when you compare it with China, how they invested in the last 15 years period, and what did they build? Well, I'm not aware of any bridges falling in China. Okay, it might be propaganda, but still, just look at the network of the speed rails or the new, I don't know, airports that they build or whatever, the dams. They are investing heavily into green technology. Europe is lagging. I mean, it's a decade. It looks like I lost a decade to me. So what are they saying? What is the remedy for the future, the leftists? Because we have to do something about it, no? Unless we want to be really, you know, a skansen of nice Roman and whatever artifacts, but otherwise there is nothing here. Even the German automakers are falling apart.
Yeah, the leftists demand investments to healthcare, investments to productive social transformation and transition. There is the demand of a European-wide rent initiative to have to cap the rents, to regard housing as a human right. And there is the proposal of energy, basic energy provision is one of the concepts. And what else? Yes, I think education is a very important topic. So the sufficient education and investing in education. And care, and to regard, so to say, a different model of economy, also a care-centered economy, and not the production or even military-centered economy as we see it now.
This is craziness, no? When money from guns are needed, and suddenly, what was it in Germany? 500 billions that they allocated, or something in that ballpark, just out like that. Anyways, Tim and myself, we are unionists. So what is the plan for kind of revitalizing the unions in Europe? Because well, it's almost as bad as in 100 years nowadays. So what is the left saying about this?
You are more expert here. I know.
Well, I'm not an expert. I'm just, we know Slovak situation. Tim knows British situation a bit, but the pan-European, I don't know what perspective eludes us. So what are you hearing from your colleagues on that front?
Well, I know Transform does, and also European Left work together with the European Trade Union Confederation and Trade Union Institute. I think they are really doing great work. I mean, when you say it's like 100 years ago, is probably also that it gets harder and harder to unionize, and the attacks are harsher. I find it very relevant that unions are also opening up to the new fields of work, to digital work, to platform work. I know that the left faction has brought through a very good labor protection law for platform workers. But at the same time, we see, of course, for example, the European Minimum Wage Directive that was brought forward and brought through by the left faction. It is now heavily attacked again. So whatever is won can be immediately also drawn back again. So it is really about uniting across unions, across organizations to defend and to struggle for those directives.
Capitalism never sleeps, Barbara.
Yes, I agree.
Tim, last questions, because we have to wrap
I'm
it
good.
up.
I'm good.
Slowly.
I'm just looking as we speak at this this Prater Park, not Prater Park. Jesuit.
Yeah, okay.
I think we will meet in end of August in Vienna. It would be very nice.
Definitely there.
Suddenly looks an entertaining thing to join. Yeah. It's would it all be in German? Do I need to brush up?
There are some English discussions.
Okay.
And yeah, for the celebration,
right,
you don't need the language. It's international.
Okay, so thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much to the audience for listening in and watching the interview. We will be continuing with other interviews, well, in the next couple of days or weeks. We are working with other guests. So thank you very much and have a nice day.
Thank you very much, and great success for Junia and for Nova Łavica, and all the best.
Thank you very much. Bye then.
Okay.